Well, friends, it's finally here, the rate cutting cycle. Let's take a look today on the weekly update. Okay, friends, let's talk. The rate cutting cycle has begun. Here's what you need to know. First up, the global rate cutting cycle has started, just not in the US. So we're going to be looking at foreign banks and what they're doing with their interest rates. First up, Europe. Here's AP reporting. European Central Bank jumps ahead of the Fed in lowering rates, but future cuts may be limited. So what did the ECB do? They cut interest rates to 3.75 from 4%. Now, this is interesting, not because they're cutting rates. That's absolutely what they need to be doing. The ECB, the euro economy is a little weak here. It needs rate cuts, much the same that we do. But what I find interesting is that annual inflation in the eurozone is 2.6, well above the 2% target. So this is a rate cut above target inflation. And what's going to happen from here? Well, we actually don't know. So what's going to be interesting is to watch what happens with Eurozone inflation and see how do Euro consumers react to this rate cut. And Euro consumers are going to be a good read on American consumers because, consumers are consumers anywhere around the world. It's just that the American consumers really love to spend. So whatever happens in the Eurozone, I would expect it to be a little bit more than what happens here in America. So first up, Eurozone, they're cutting rates. Second up, Canada, our neighbor to the north, actually was the first G7 nation to cut interest rates. Here's some reporting from, I think it's Financial Times. Let's just enjoy the moment for a bit, said Governor Tiff Macklem. The Bank of Canada Central Bank cut rates to 4.75 from 5%. And here again, just like in the Eurozone, the issue is this is an above target cut here as well. Inflation did hit a 3-year low of 2.7% in April, but for Canada, that is also above their 2% target. So once again, we have cuts that are happening with inflation, maybe not under control. What's going to happen here? Who knows? But we're going to get a lot of data that's going to tell us whether this is the right thing to do or not. And one of the most interesting things about Canada, because Canada actually cut rates at the start of the month, we're actually starting to get some data releases after the cut, so we can get some sense of what are Canadians doing now that interest rates are being cut. Surprisingly, inflation is rising in May, and that's causing all sorts of market interactions about future rate cuts in Canada. So Bank of Canada cut interest rates for the first time in 4 years at the start of the month. But what happened? Here's chief economist at BMO. No bones about it. This inflation read is not what the Bank of Canada wanted to see at this point and clearly shaves the odds of a follow-up July rate cut. What happened? Canadian inflation accelerated to 2.9% in May. Again, remember, they have the same 2% target that we do, while key measures of core inflation edged up for the first time in 5 months. So what happened was, whether this is from the interest rate cut or not, this data is sort of like ahead of those cuts, but maybe consumers were anticipating. We'll see. We don't have enough data yet to pass judgment, but it's interesting to see what the impact is going to be on Canadian consumers because of these rate cuts. Money markets, trimmed their odds of increasing rate cuts. Now only 45% chance of a Canadian cut in July, down from 70% seen on Monday. So this inflation read, the market is taking it pretty hard up there. So what does this all mean if we put it all together about the global rate cutting cycle beginning? Well, the rate cutting cycle has begun in Canada and Europe. It's likely going to spread globally, and I think it's also coming here to the United States. And these rate cuts are interesting to see because inflation is still not at the target threshold, right? That's one of the things that I think is so interesting about this cutting cycle. We're cutting with inflation not under control. And the risk that we're running here is that inflation might flare up on the back of these rate cuts. We'll see. We don't know that yet, but we'll see how responsive consumers are to a little bit of financial loosening. I have a feeling they're going to be very responsive to it. And so one of the things that I'm going to be watching from here, the Fed and the market will be watching the effects of these global rate cuts to inform policy domestically. So we're going to learn a whole lot in, a very short amount of time about what happens when we make rate cuts above our inflation target. So the rate cutting cycle has begun. I think it's going to go around the world, and I think it's going to show up here in the United States as well. We'll see what happens to the data after that. there you go. That's the news review. I'll see you this weekend for the markets review. Take care. Okay, friends, that was the video. I hope you liked it. If you found it informative, good, entertaining, I'd love if you could scroll down here beneath the video and give me a like there. It helps us out with the algorithm. And then if you want to be notified first of anything new that we upload to the channel, if you come over here, click subscribe, you'll be the first to know as soon as we upload anything. Appreciate it. See you soon.